All right. Thank you, Cesar. Thank you so much, Ernesto. I'll try not to let you down after that intro. Um, Obviously, on behalf of AACE Houston Gulf Coast, we want everybody to stay safe and healthy. We want to get through this as quick as possible. So don't be like these two people here on the screen unless your family members or your husband and wife stay 6 feet away and let's do the right thing, quarantine and get this behind us as quickly as we can. All right, so here we go. I may, just on the way that the screens are set up, struggle to try and concentrate and address questions as they come, but there should be some time at the end, and I'll come back and look at those, and maybe Cesar, you can sort of make a note of the best ones. All right, so the plan today is I'll give you a little bit of background on myself and the company I work for. I'll do that as quickly and painlessly as possible. And then we'll focus on the client story. I'm going to deliver this really as like a case study. So what was the background of the situation with this particular client? What were their pain points? What were their project and corporate needs? Then what was the journey like to get them to where they are today with their one-stop shop for project governance, for portfolio management, project dashboards and visibility, where they are today and what their plans are for the future. So first off, a bit about myself. Obviously, I've got an accent. I'm not from Texas. I was born in Perth a long time ago, and while I got plenty of hair, most of it's grey. So it's pretty obvious I'm not a young chicken anymore. I actually spent half my childhood, the second half of my childhood, living in Houston. So I became a big fan of Houston sports teams. Still a fan of the Astros and the Rockets. Unfortunately, I followed the Oilers to Tennessee. Did my engineering degree in Western Australia and worked exclusively out of Australia from the mid 80s to 2012. And you can see I was fortunate. I got an opportunity to travel around the world a lot in that time frame, and more so with my time in Omega. The stars there are different places I've been to work-wise. Sometimes it was very luxurious, sometimes not quite so much. So a couple of years ago, spent a week in Senegal in West Africa, and that sea container there, the right third of that sea container was my accommodation for the week. So traveling is not always everything it's cracked up to be. Work-wise, Omega took over the company I was running in 2010. So I stayed on as the general manager for Omega, running Australian operations from 2010 to 12. And then I got myself relocated to the US and became VP of Business Development here in Houston for Omega. And I love to show off my grandchildren. Met my second and last wife at OTC in Houston, as it turns out, in 2010. And we have two beautiful grandchildren. The youngest is about to turn 1. All right, the company I work for. I work for Omega. We're a global company. We're founded and still headquartered out of Norway, a privately held company, company that's focused on oil and gas from the beginning and helping companies execute capital projects throughout the world. Obviously, we've ridden all of the oil price turmoil and issues we've had since the early 90s, and hopefully this one, we're about to come out the end of it. We have two key business streams. One of the business streams is providing consultants to the owner operators. And in terms of sheer numbers of our 1,400 or so employees, about 1,000 of those at the moment would be out there working on on projects, anywhere from 3 to 6 months to 3 to 5 years. And they're in typical project controls roles, so they might be in construction management, commissioning, uh, project managers, document controllers, cost engineers, etc. So that's one of the two main pieces of our business, and the other is our product suite, PIMS. So it's a range of software products, again, all focused really on helping companies execute capital projects, document control, so managing the reviews and approval of documents between engineering companies, EPCMs, owner-operators, managing all of your budgets and forecasts on your major capital projects, mechanical completion, commissioning, preservation, risk management, interface management between the different parties. And that's the world where I fit into. So I'm a VP on the software side of our business, the PIM side, and I have a colleague here who's a VP on the consulting side of things. Global company, you can see there's lots of offices up here in Norway. Ørnsvåg is in fact our headquarters, not Stavanger or Oslo, but we do have major and large offices in both of those locations. Offices in Canada, Calgary and St. John's, down in Guyana, Georgetown, Australia, Singapore, and additional offices in Europe, everywhere from Sweden to Denmark to Lithuania, France, the UK, and Scotland. Hopefully I didn't leave anybody out there. And virtually every one of these offices is a full service office, so providing both consulting services and software skills and implementations and support. Okay, that's the painful part over and done with. That's the background and on the company and myself. All right, so what's the scenario I'm trying to cover in this case story? So we were dealing with a European oil and gas company. Upstream, downstream business, large projects and smaller projects. And they were already an existing Omega and PIMS client. So they were already using some of our PIMS suite of products. And like many companies, they were well advanced in their digitization strategy in 2017 and created this vision for CapDat. And then they went out and created a specification to match that vision so that they could get a solution delivered. So that's the case study that we're talking about today. And this is a real story. What were some of their key pain points? And in fact, these pain points were extracted straight out of their specification document. So project data wasn't transparent, it wasn't easily available, wasn't always available to the right people at the right times. As you can imagine, there was a huge amount of manual effort involved in both gathering the data and also assuring the quality of that data. It's coming from people's spreadsheets and from Access databases and all that sort of wonderful data sources. The data was often requested by various functions and people throughout the company, frequently ad hoc, frequently it was needed straight away, and these requests weren't always treated in a systematic manner. Like most large companies, they had multiple systems in place already. So they had their financials in SAP. They had an internal system managing production data. They had project milestones, partly in Primavera. They had project reporting in Excel and the PIMS tools that they were using at the time. So looking for a way of consolidating data from all of those different sources into a single solution. And their main reporting tool, which was to provide executive summaries, had a high risk of mistakes. It wasn't always stable, wasn't always available when it should have been. So that was a key pain point as well. And in many of their meetings, they talked about their shortcomings of project reporting. So they created the vision for CapDat. And this, again, this vision comes straight out of their, why is my video not playing? Hang on, my little animated GIF. Come on, play for me. There we go. Okay. Yes. Sorry about that. So they, this was the vision they had for CapDat, to be this one of their governments to the truth about a project within 30 seconds. So very aggressive vision. And their initial plans and design was focused on really the creation of an interactive reporting tool. So just a reporting tool that brought data from all of those previous sources we talked about together, provided better quality about them, and they had now their one-stop shop. So they're going to bring in data from SAP, their ERP system. They're going to bring data in from Excel. So they had some project data in Excel, their production internal system, some from PIMS, etc. And Power BI was seen originally as the likely tool to deliver this. All right, so they spent virtually all of 2018 developing their specification document. Put that into place. They looked at two key options. One was to purchase and develop systems that would be heavily integrated into their operations environment, or to go the other way and completely develop a custom solution. By early 2019, they had decided that the way to go ahead was to develop a custom solution with Omega. So we started working with them in early 2019, and they also had the maturity and foresight to say, Omega, you end up owning this solution. You can take it into your product suite, and then down the track, we can benefit from some of the things that other clients input into the system. So it's truly a partnership and a collaborative effort. All right. So some of the first things that happened in early 2019 were some prototype development. So there was 2 releases created in the first part of that year, and in a little while we'll get into some screenshots that are more readable than this one. This was, as I said, just prototyping information. So we're bringing in the project costs, performance, and production data, turning that into dashboards and some milestone reports. And then phase 2 was bringing in some more project progress information, some KPIs, HSE, and resource planning. And still at this stage, it was a reporting centric tool that they were looking for. But during 2019, the scope got expanded, and they decided they wanted to include the ability to provide updated information and input data directly within the tool, which really focused further down that path of a one-stop shop for project reporting and visibility. So this prototyping and that change of scope didn't affect us. Our agile development methodology works well in that case. And we also had the benefit that we had our project team working closely with and alongside the client. So development was occurring during 2019, and towards the end of the year, the current status then was thankfully, that CapDat was up and running. They had roughly 100 users. Um, in terms of, we talked a minute ago about data input, and it wasn't just, hey, type some numbers onto a screen. Everybody's come from an Excel background. Everybody's an Excel junkie. So we started with the ability to easily export data from the system into Excel templates. The user could then update the data inside Excel and then import it back into the tool that way. So it wasn't really requiring any new technology or understanding and training. It was working with the tools they were well and truly comfortable with. And eventually that evolved. That ability is still there to use Excel and import data, but in many cases, there's areas where you can just input the data directly into the system. And the project status was giving us the project progress and performance insight that they were looking for. So data was coming directly from these other systems, from PIMS cost and risk, for instance, from their production data system, from SAP with financials. And Excel was still being used as an input mechanism. So that's where we got to in late 2019. So let's take a tour. So I'm now going to show you what it looks like, what's been built. So when you log in, there's the home page. Got some, charting capabilities on the right-hand side to show different project locations, and they can click on those and it'll zoom in a bit further. Key information on the left, the projects we've got going on, their current cutoff period, what phase they're in, the next toll gate due date, and standard sort of traffic lights on how we're going in terms of cost, schedule, and production on each of these projects. And then we can click on a project like this one here, and it expands out, and we can see a lot more detailed information. So we can come in and look at high-level project information. We can zero in on cost and progress, and we'll take a tour of these in a second. And then after that, we can come back and look at, their executive summary and dashboard views. So diving into high-level project information, you can see across the top, there's other areas we can dive into, and we'll look at some of those. And this is an example where they didn't want to create and manage a separate system just for providing this sort of consolidated project information. They can enter it directly into here. So, they can update legal entities and whether it's onshore work or offshore, self-operated, non-operated, brownfield, greenfields, etc. All the key information about the project is here. In addition, there's a lot of workflow approvals that they can trigger, as you can see up here in the top right corner. So they can start the approval process for the current cutoff period, create a new baseline, copy baselines, etc. You can see what's going to be the next toll gate, what current phase are we in, and various other attributes about this particular project. And a lot of these will factor in later on when we look at portfolio reporting. And you can even create a project directly in the system here if you need to. And then if you click on more information, we've got some extra details, project types, key people that are involved in here in this project, the relevant currencies in place, the project currency, our functional currency, and our reporting currency. And here we define the key people for the project managers, owners, etc. And the role that they're plugged into here ties directly into those actions and workflow approvals we saw on the previous slide in that top right-hand corner. So as soon as they're plugged in here, then for instance, if the cutoff period needs to be approved, it will automatically include them in the approval process and workflow. Okay, and then just jumping across some of these tabs across the top, you can see standard WBS structure in here, what items are measurable, etc. You can see plan dates and actual dates. On the next tab, the toll gates. So what is the toll gate and when was it actually achieved? All right, set up our baselines to suit. They can be updated in here. They can add new baselines if they need to. And they can also manage all of the cutoff dates, when they expect first gas, when the cutoff date was approved, etc. So all nice consolidated information about all the relevant high-level pieces we need to manage. And lastly, a permissions tab where we invoke security control. So who has access, who has read-only access to what data have they got access to. They can then create and manage actions from in here. And I sort of talked a bit about earlier on that Power BI was originally what they expected would be the appropriate solution to create CapDat. And it does a lot of things really well. But this is where it became a real challenge for them, and they ultimately decided to go away from that being the primary tool. It had limitations when you wanted to enable data to be inputted into the system, and for that to trigger reviews. Updates became a challenge, and approvals. Also, it doesn't handle table row permission control as easily as they would like. So this system, as it was now evolving more into more than just a reporting tool, also some data input and lots of reviews and approvals, it needed to evolve to be more than just standard Power BI reporting tool, and hence it ended up in PIMS. Okay, obviously we can manage and look at our key cost information. What are our planned costs? This data, some of this data will come directly from SAP, some of it's coming directly from PIMS cost, and in some cases for a small project, they can add all of the relevant costs in here directly. And they can also import them from Excel. It includes full functionality for phasing the costs over time for your project. We've got our actual CapEx and phases mentioned here, and got the same sort of information for progress as well as cost. So on a month-by-month basis for our cutoffs, where are we at in terms of progress? And they've also added a nice pivot tool in there as well. All right, milestones. So they have two types of key milestones. The critical ones are their toll gates and baselines, and we can manage them in here. We can see when we are planning for first oil, for instance, down in the bottom section, and all of our other key toll gates, and actual versus forecast versus just looking at the plans, and then also the same thing, but here we're looking at project specific milestones. So the critical ones are their standard toll gates and management of baselines, whereas these milestones are more project specific. So as built drawings are going to be needed. We want to achieve a certain mechanical completion status or on a particular system or subsystem by a certain date, ready for startup, etc. So this gives the project flexibility to manage their own milestones at whatever level they want. And obviously a major capital project is going to have different milestones here than maybe a smaller one. And later on, there's a nice sort of visual of the milestone mapping over time. We track and make visible the production data. So how we're going in terms of oil and gas data over time. What was our plan? And actuals versus forecast. Again, this data is coming from their internal production data system. All right, so that's sort of a tour of some of those key areas where they can both view that information and in many cases do some of their own updates to that information. Now let's look at their executive summary and dashboard at the project level. And then after that, we'll start looking at portfolio reporting. Now, if you remember, the executive summary was one of their key pain points. In terms of risk, I skipped over that a bit. They just sort of treated that. They focus on at the high level, the top 10 risks each period per project. So nothing earth-shattering there. Staffing is really just tracking your high-level personnel requirements, and HSSE for them was their key incident summary. So their executive summary, the dashboard is obviously going to be sexier than this, but this is what the executives needed: high-level details about the project, the scope, tollgate history, production over time, first gas, key milestones on the critical path, and costs, both life cycle costs, project costs annually, and the current phase. And later on, you'll see some more of these trends. They're a bit small there, but there's a lot of these little forecasted trends to show you which way you're headed. So that really was helping address their needs for an executive summary. And then underneath that, we've got more detail. We can drill in and look at performance of cost over time with our traditional charts. What does production look like over time? And major milestones at the project level. Here we get text information, just some general high-level information about scope and objectives. And everything in CapDat is tied to the cutoff period. It's also tied to baselines and toll gates and the approval workflow to make sure data quality is there. So as my colleague Arvid used to love to say, if somebody goes in and sort of accidentally types in a cost number that has a few too many zeros, panic won't set in because it'll be captured in the approval workflow before it ends up on an executive's dashboard. And that was another change during the 2019 development lifecycle was the original scope didn't include this cutoff feature, but that had to get incorporated as they found out what they were dealing with. So there's some standard KPI reporting here, looking at contingencies and milestone variance, cost performance. Back to the milestones again, another little snapshot of how we're going milestone wise for first oil and toll gates. And then into cost performance over the years. So what was planned versus actuals, And underneath that, when you're looking at the, the screen, is a monthly breakdown of your cost phasing in the current year. And then you can see here budgets, actuals, CapEx, OpEx approvals, and it's all nicely put together in one place. Okay, then we've also in this area is our progress chart. How are we going over time? Forecast versus actual. All right, so that sort of summarized that executive summary and dashboard. Now, this little icon here is their portfolio icon. So I can dive into the portfolio reporting, and it's one nice big dashboard. It actually is multiple screens deep. So I've sort of captured snapshots of each of the key pieces. Here we've got a good breakdown of our phases for our projects, owner operated versus partner projects, um, schedule and cost comparisons, how we're going in terms of project cost deviations. And there's a lot of complex formulas in the background here determining the size of these um, circles, where they belong here in cost schedule charts, where it's taken into account, their share of that particular project. Are they 100% shareholder or 50%, whatever the case may be? The cost of the project, the overall length of the project, and other factors all sort of coming to play in here to determine the portfolio reporting. So if I'd scroll down, the next part of their portfolio, again, this was something we had close on that first screen, their homepage with the projects and their traffic lights for cost, schedule, and production. The project toll gates, when were they forecast, planned, and when did they get actualized over time? And again, these projects here, we can use portfolio filtering to limit or expand on that. Here's another good use of those trending icons, the green up arrows, the red down arrows, and the yellow or gold sort of steady as she goes. And I think if you're observant in a previous one, a green arrow was pointing down. So it depends on the context of what information we're looking at here. But good snapshots of cost and schedule performance, and I can also filter here interactively based on the phase of project I want to look at. In addition, a lot of the information that's controlling these trends and KPI formulas are delivered as data choices for the client, so they can configure those to suit without having to rely on us for programming. All right, a few more charts still following in from that portfolio reporting. So we've got, what's our exposure based on individual projects, by divisions within the organization, by countries, etc. And this was a good choice, good situation to use that portfolio reporting and filtering down, so you don't have quite so many projects to try and come to grips with. And here's that visual I was talking about on the milestones. So again, these are those project specific milestones. So I can see when they're occurring. They can be as straightforward as when is the EPCM contract going to be awarded, or when is first gas, down to when will we receive the pump package and installation of a water injection pump? When will that be completed? And so on and so forth in here. So good way to visualize what are the key activities coming up in the near future. All right. So back here, here's where they can set up those portfolios. So they can filter based on business unit, phase of projects, size. Is it a major capital project or a minor one? Um, the visibility into it, regions that they operate in, and then they can save those projects into their portfolios and swap between one portfolio and another. So it's easy to set up, a portfolio that's region based or just upstream or upstream within one or more regions in a certain phase. And then they can go and, those same last 5 slides or so I was showing from their portfolio dashboard all take that into account. So that's where they got to at the end of 2019. Had a nice quote from their client product manager. They very happy with the system and looking at doing some more with it, and I'll talk about that in one or two more slides. I wanted to share as I get close to wrapping up our session, what were some of the key lessons learned? So I mentioned before, they spent 12 months creating a specification document. My takeaway from that is don't over design before you start. And even though 12 months was spent nearly on that specification, during the next 12 months during the development period, major scope changes occurred. So the solution went from being just a reporting tool to a reporting tool with some data input in there. And that became quite a big thing. Also, during that development period, it was obvious that they needed to take the cutoff periods into account. So that was a key thing. Another thing that they did that my developer was telling me worked really successful, they actually had a separate sort of graphic design company working with them, and they set up all of the standards that they wanted us to use. So they created all of the standard icons, the color combinations they wanted, the look and feel, the dashboards, and what sort of information should typically be in those. And that saved us a lot of time. So we didn't have to have developers sort of going backwards and forwards with the client to discuss those things. They were already in place. Similarly, break the work up into phases. Use a agile iterative development approach so you can see what's going on as you progress, because you certainly don't want to happen what's in that right hand cartoon. The fact that along the lines it was decided to combine the reporting focus with the ability to input some data to make it much more interactive in that sense, and not go and build off other little systems on the side, I think was a very good business decision. Make sure you communicate, and in all situations like this, make sure you've got a product champion. So coming back to our pain points, they've got data transparency now. It's visible to everybody that needs it. It's always available in a timely manner. It's controlled, so the quality assurance is there by making sure that the data is approved from a cutoff period, looking into baselines. All the right people are involved in that process. The system is automatically collating data from other systems like SAP and their production data system. The data now is available to all of the key people that need it, so they don't have all of those ad hoc requests that we alluded to in the beginning. All of those different systems, SAP, the production system, Primavera, PIMS, Excel, are all delivering the information into a single tool, CapDat, for them to use. The executive summaries are fit for purpose. They've got exactly what they want in those summaries. They've got the dashboard visibility under that, and they've addressed their project shortcomings. All right, what's going to happen in the future? So from the client side, they're going to now, this at the start of this year and now ongoing, to incorporate their minor capital projects into the system. So getting that data in there. In some of those cases, the projects are small enough that effectively almost all of the data will be just recorded directly into CapDat. There's a little bit more development to go on to provide their monthly performance reports. The plans are to expand the user base from roughly 100 users to roughly 300. And they were looking to expand on the use of PIMS, so add some more process support in there, as well as stage gate, or in their terminology, toll gate management. And in fact, if it hadn't have been for COVID-19, I know that work would already be well and truly underway. From an Omega perspective, we can deliver presentations like this to customers that might be interested now. We will be looking at taking on board that stage gate management and bringing that in, since that's such a essential part of CapDat. We'll also be looking to further integrate it with the PIMS product suite, and over time incorporating CapDat fully into the PIMS product suite. All right, that is the end of my slides. There's my contact details. So if you're interested in any more, just email me or give me a call. So I'm going to touch base now with Cesar to see if we've got any questions he wants to hand over to me.
So we've got a question from Martin Polak, and he wants to know if this data is stored in the cloud or is it on premises servers?
It can be either. In this case, it's stored in the cloud, but this solution can be implemented on-prem or in the cloud, whatever the client prefers.
So I've got a question. In terms of integration, does it integrate data like with software such as like P6 or Safran, where you can exchange scheduling data?
Yes, yeah, they're already bringing data in from Primavera, and we have a standard API tool in PIMS that lets us suck in data from other systems. So it's just a matter of configuring those to suit the purpose.
Okay. So Monica wants to know, what other softwares does it integrate with?
Well, at the moment, this has been built primarily as a tool for this specific client, and it will evolve more over time. So at the moment, it's integrating with SAP, Primavera, obviously PIMS, as well as this customer's internal production data system. But over time, as we expand the breadth of CapDat, there'll be further integrations available.
And another user asked, is this a SaaS solution?
Effectively, but the term SaaS means different things to different people. So this sort of solution, if you're talking your traditional SaaS model, that operates one database and multiple clients are all having their data housed within that same database, and then there's obviously security concerns with that. So Salesforce.com is one of those. This solution, we don't deploy it this way. Each client's implementation of PIMS and CapDat would be an isolated solution. Yes, you could say it's still software as a service, but not in that traditional sense.
Okay, and Gabriel wants to know how much flexibility is there to customize to specific organization project dashboard needs.
I would say at this stage there's pretty much unlimited flexibility, because I mean this was built from the ground up based on one client's requirements. Over time, 5 years from now, it'll become more of a standardized product, where then your ability to make major modifications is a little bit more, what's the right word? You think about it a bit more, but certainly at the moment, it's a product that's been built and implemented for one client. So now's a good time to be flexible.
We've got a comment from Paul. He says, nice presentation. I know you mentioned that has been using some of your modules initially, but did you replace some legacy apps along the way with new modules or data capture elements?
Yep, primarily, and thank you, Paul. Primarily, we didn't replace systems. Because that was what they already had those systems in place. They wanted to take advantage of those, consolidate. So that was done, but we avoided the creation of smaller little systems that would have housed some of that additional, like, high level project information you saw, some of that milestones. So I'd say it's more a case of we avoided creating some little systems on the side by consolidating it all into CapDat.
Okay. Sammy's asking a question, but I think you answered it. Is it cloud-based?
Yes, Sammy, it can be. It can be cloud-based or on-prem, whichever. It's the
And
customer's preference.
so Ernesto asked, how high level and detailed is the reporting? Does the reporting go to lower level reporting for construction milestones, reporting, and performance?
Well, it certainly, I mean, those milestones are set at the project level, so they can be as detailed as you like. Whether I don't think it was necessarily designed to go down to that low level of detail you might want in construction. Doesn't mean it couldn't do it, but I don't think that was the primary focus. But certainly those milestones can be as detailed as you like. And I know some of their smaller projects are more like 5 million euros and smaller.
I've got a question in regards to some of this historical data. Do you do benchmarking? Do you reference any of these industry benchmarking like IPA or something with your data?
Yep, sort of. So we have a benchmarking tool called PIMS Experience in Benchmarking, but it is designed primarily as a tool for internal use within an organization to benchmark their own projects. Now, that doesn't mean you can't bring in to that, okay, what does an IPA standard look like? What does the CII standard look like? And compare yourselves to them. But primarily, it's a tool for internal use by a client of their own internal projects.